everybody, welcome back to Exponential Finance, the podcast covering finance, technology and innovation, from our home in Japan and beyond. The Seoul FinTech Lab was established in 2019 and since then, has been funded by the Seoul Metropolitan Government. To date, close to 100 fintech startups, including 26 foreign companies, have been supported through the incubation program. The Seoul FinTech Lab aims to help accelerate fintech companies' growth with its global network of over 300 partners and mentors, which include highly experienced investors, entrepreneurs and regulators. In that regard, the Seoul program possibly differs from similar regional programs. From the outset, it has been designed to allow for Pan-Asian and even global expansion while promoting the growth of the domestic ecosystem. The applications for the 2021 batch are open until June 4th, and the selection process will be completed by June 18th. So you will not have to wait long for a decision. Since nothing beats real-world experience, we spoke with Chea Srun, a French national with a distinguished career in derivatives trading, having worked and lived in Hong Kong, Tokyo, and Seoul, and being able to converse professionally in all three languages. Chea is the founder and CEO of X-Quant, a startup that got accepted into the accelerator last year.
I used to work in Japan. I have been in Japan for 10 years. So Japanese, yes, fortunately, Japanese is actually quite useful to me even these days. I'm starting to expand to Japan, and I'm pitching in Japanese with some Japanese potential customer. Actually, I didn't thought that I'm able to do that because I left Japan already for more than 15 years. I'm glad that I can still use it. My Japanese is actually better even than my Korean, although I'm Korean longer. It's easier to learn when you are younger. There's nothing you can do against that. Yeah. I personally found it very difficult to work with Japanese counterpart. If you don't speak Japanese, you can have a better interaction if you can speak Japanese. Some other countries is different, from Singapore or Hong Kong, that wouldn't be an issue. But Japan is sometimes an issue. The good thing is Japan has a big markets, and the company, they can already do a lot of business internally without even care about foreign customers, etc., which is not the same case as Korea. Korea has a much smaller market, and therefore it's a matter of survival that you do something outside of Korea, because very quickly you are already talk to everyone that potentially can be your customer, then you have to expand.
Singapore seems to be an easy place for foreign companies to start or companies to come to Asia, but the Singapore market itself, whether it's retail or institutional, is also pretty small, so you need to do ASEAN business or so pretty quickly.
Yes, absolutely. Singapore is a hub, but there's many companies. If you want to do the retail, B2C business is very small. B2B, I think it's much, much better because then they have so many companies. Yeah.
It's super interesting that the Seoul Metropolitan Government is doing this program. I mean, from a timeline, they're super aggressive. I was surprised when I looked at the schedules. Applications are to be submitted by June 4th, and then 2 rounds of evaluation. 2 weeks later, they make a decision, which is super quick.
This is what is fantastic with Korea, is that, that everything goes so quickly. At least you are selected or not. You don't have to wait for months, before you know. And that's everything like that in Korea. For example, we found out, there's a program. And then you look at it, deadline next week. You have to hurry up to make it. But then after you submit it, then a few days later, they tell you, you got it or you lose it. That's good. Actually, I like it. So we work hard, we work quickly, but then we know very quickly that we don't need to wait forever. I think this is really one of the advantages of being in Korea. This is the working style. But of course, on the negative side, our duty to produce something, then you also have to do it quickly. And we have customers are very demanding. They say, okay, next week I want a new release. And then you have no choice than just to work the weekend and, and to get the thing done. So they expect high quality from you. On the other hand, things go faster than when you want from somebody else. And actually, being used to the speed of Korea, sometimes when I work with maybe some European counterpart, I found it a little bit too slow.
How onerous was it to do the application for the Seoul FinTech Lab program?
I'm a foreigner, although I speak good Korean, but somehow the whole application, maybe if I have to do it myself, would be a little bit difficult. I have the help from my colleagues because we are 3 founders, and the 2 others are Koreans, and therefore they help a lot to gather the document. But I would say no, there's not so many things to provide. We apply actually as a foreign company because the company was incorporated in Hong Kong in 2018. And then in 2019, 6 months later, I heard about this program. So we quickly gathered the documents. It hasn't been difficult, and there was an interview, and everything went well. We got also help from friends, who are already in the FinTech Lab, who give us some advices. The process has been, I would say, quite easy.
So from the outset, when you founded the company, you already had Korean co-founders.
Yes, we have Korean co-founders, and that's actually helping a lot. I have to say that if you are just a foreigner coming to Korea, I think it will be probably difficult if you don't have the language skill, because a lot of things is still in Korean. No choice, you have to deal with that. I'm lucky to have partners who can help me to apply for all those things, so that I can focus on all the stuff.
There are obviously similar programs in Singapore and in Tokyo and maybe in many other places now as well. You didn't really go through an evaluation whether you could take advantage of a similar program in Japan or Singapore because of the founder composition. Seoul was the natural choice.
Absolutely, because we know the markets here in Korea, because those potential customers in the future, they are the companies we know well. Well, either we walk in, they are all around the Yoido area. So we are rather confident that this is a good place to start with. And if we cannot get the business here, we cannot get anywhere. We better start it in Korea. But having said that, the product we are doing, it's not anything specific to Korea. And it will work as well in Hong Kong and in Singapore. Actually, even easier. That's easier because then I have probably just to deal with English and not, currently we have to deal with Korean. We have language model that is working with Korean language. So we do translation, train the model, etc. Whereas probably in Singapore, maybe easier. English would be sufficient.
In addition to the office space that you get from the FinTech Lab, what other support structures do they provide?
Initially, when I joined, I didn't know. I thought that office space is the only thing I can get. But then I realized that actually there's much more into this program. For example, we get many mentoring. The company who's running Seoul FinTech Lab is called Accelerator. So they have people who are working with a lot of startups, and they give advices about, for example, how to get some package. There are some early startup package which we apply. They help us to make the application and to increase our chance. We got 2 times this package. And then we also get the R&D package as well. So many advices we get from them. They also provide, for example, assistance for patent. If you have something that you want to patent, and they also do that. They provide also some seminar and also a lot of information outside. For example, I got connected to Luxembourg with a program in Luxembourg called LuxGo. I could pitch in Luxembourg virtually to some other participants and potential investors. They also connect us to X-Hub Tokyo, the inbounding program. Thanks to that, we got help from Deloitte in Tokyo, helping us to understand more about the Japanese market, and also, more importantly, connect us to some other companies. And currently, actually, I'm still talking to those companies in Japan, and hopefully that will be something beneficial. So without that, we would never have done it, I would say.
I think that's very noteworthy, and it comes through a bit also in the description of the program. It doesn't necessarily require you, although obviously it's a preference to do business in Korea, it's also as a launch pad for the rest of Asia. So everything you described now is ultimately, you can take a strict view on saying that distracts you from doing business in Korea. So if I, as a Korean government, sponsor you, I don't necessarily want you to do business in Japan, but it's presented and positioned as a new hub, as an alternative maybe to the offshore centers like Hong Kong and Singapore. And it's not exclusively focused on Korea. It's like, come to Korea and conquer Asia from here.
Yes, and actually, with our experience now, we started initially in Hong Kong, but now most of our operation is in Korea, and we also have, of course, some overseas stuff. But we are thinking we're going to stay here. After we finish the Seoul FinTech Lab program, we're going to maybe find another program or get our own office, whatever. But we're going to stay here. We have no plans, for example, go back to Hong Kong. But we expand into Hong Kong, but everybody is not going to go to Hong Kong for the moment. So somehow, yes, the program succeeded to attract us and to be here, and we're happy to be here. There's 100 startups part of the Seoul FinTech Lab program. So 25 companies are overseas companies. So from Singapore, Hong Kong, mainly. Many of them, they're doing blockchain, mobile payment, some other fintech related technology, cyber securities. It's not one typical specialty.
Hey, let's talk a bit about your products and your offerings. You have a derivatives trading background or trading background overall. So first off, the personal question, how did you transition from being a trader to being an entrepreneur?
In 2015, I worked for HANA as a trader. So I was in charge of strategy investment. At that time, it was AlphaGo lost one game versus Isedol, the Korean player. And that was a huge victory for Korean. It was a national event. So people understood, of course, the importance of AI. AI has become mainstream. And I talked to my boss and said, I can set up an AI for trading. So this is how we started. So we started a team with my current partner, actually. And we start to develop algorithm using AI to trade the market, to invest into different markets, Japanese market, US market. Okay, so we work on that 1.5 years, 2 years. And after that, I realized that actually AI is more than that, just not trading, because then I start to understand that there's so many applications we can do. My partner and I, we left the company, we founded our companies. We transitioned away a little bit from trading because trading is a little bit uncertain in the sense that there's a lot of uncertainty around the result. You can be successful for 6 months, but then later on, in the next few months, something goes wrong and the model cannot predict these kind of things. So we thought we want to do something that we have more control over. So that's why we start to work on software that is helping the finance industry to go to a better automation, improve efficiency of the work. And because we know very well from the inside what are the problems, therefore we know the need of our potential customer.
So when you used for trading, did you look at prices and you basically did a quantitative algorithm on that? Or did you take external news sources and for scanning them and trying to act on those from a sentiment perspective?
We basically look at different factors which can explain the price movement. It was rather short term, like overnight trading. Sometimes maybe 1 week, we look at all the factors which can explain this price movement. We find out among those factors, those who can explain the movement. It's very difficult because there's many noises. For example, when we started, our model worked very well from the theoretical point of view, but when we executed, then it was a US election. Trump one day said, the Japanese yen is too strong. And then, but boom, suddenly the Japanese yen lose 1%, and then make Nikkei lose. So you cannot predict that. We realize that there are some limits in this kind of trading. Yeah, so
now you're focusing more on the operations and the finance space. It's a bit safer because it's a large tail of cost, of course. If you look at the middle and the back office, probably 80% of most of the cost of processing, reporting, all the regulatory requirements, and you're trying to make a dent in that.
Yes, and I also thinking that what we are doing is actually having more impact in the society. I think there's enough trading. When people trade, they say, okay, it's good for the economy, but there's enough transactions and enough friction in the market that we don't need to add more. By working on our product, I think we can actually use AI to improve overall community, and hopefully we move to a better working environment, in the future. For example, reduction of some manual work, finding better information, and for people to make better decisions.
And so the initial focus, you're looking at OTC transactions, OTC derivatives transactions that are encapsulated in a term sheet, which is unstructured data, but once you understand what type of product it's a somewhat structured because you know what data elements to expect. But rather than somebody going through 6 pages or more of this definition, you can extract it automatically and identify what the economic terms are.
Those products, we deal with them, I deal with those products for 20 years, so I know what they are. And that is our advantage compared to other companies. With our customers now, when they started this, they want a solution. And there are different companies who try to provide a solution, but it doesn't work. It's not just AI. If you don't have the knowledge of the product, your AI is not going to work. We combined our knowledge of the technology and also of the product. Without those both areas, there's no chance you can do it. It's not just taking, for example, extracting information, same as you extract a resume or a business card. That's simple. But term sheet is much more complicated because you need to really understand what product you are talking about. And there's many variations of the product. They have swap, forward, options, equity link product, foreign currency product, etc. And there's many conventions, etc. So it would be difficult for people who are not insider try to do something.
Your biggest enemy in a way is then standardization. So if you look at maybe what ISTAR is doing, or has been promoting FPML for almost 20 years now too, and now they have this common domain model. If people migrate to that standard and everybody uses the same fields with the same defined contents, then obviously there wouldn't be a need for your software, but we're kind of years off from that.
In fact, yes, we are aware of that. But rather than consider as enemy, in fact, this is our objective, to be the standard. So meaning that if we have enough customers who are using our software, now we can tell the customer, why don't you even produce those documents in the first place? How about creating a standard and produce directly? And then everybody sharing the standard, then you don't even need to extract the information. This is exactly what you're saying, right? Yes, if we become a player that has enough market share, we can do that. One day this can happen. Having said that, we are still far away from this. The financial industry is quite slow moving. It's usually a very conservative sector. You'll be amazed, but we have some people who are asking us, can you do fax? Can you read fax? And fax is a 1980 solution. And they want our software to be able to take confirmation document from the fax and then make it. Actually, we can, but we don't really want to do it because you are doing a 2020 solution for a 1980 problem. Somehow doesn't make sense. I think the customer should rather try to move from fax to something better. That's telling you that, in fact, the technology is not moving so quickly for everyone. We don't really want to invest too much in this really too old-fashioned technology.
One of your first customers, and that's public information also on your website, is ultimately the Korean Stock Exchange, which has been designated as a transaction repository for the Korean market in the same way that the CCC is the repository for the US market. And so talk a little bit about that, please.
Yes. Since April this year, it is compulsory for all the participants, OTC participants, to report their transaction. Not every transaction, by starting with IRS, CRS, and then more and more product, and hopefully by next year, maybe every product, OTC product, would have to be reported. KRX, the Korea Stock Exchange, is the manager of the trade repository. So our customer is actually not KRX. Our customer is a service company who are providing the reporting service. Because there's many banks and securities, they have to report their transactions, but they don't have the resource or the time to do it. They prefer to outsource the work to this service company. So we are helping the service company to deal with the flow of transaction that they have to report. Before, there's no actually reporting obligation. But now, because it's compulsory, so they have this thousands of transactions to report per week. There's a lot of things to do. It'll be very difficult for them to do it manually. Still possible, but it takes a lot of the workforce. Our software came to be very handy. We are actually quite lucky because when we started, we didn't know about this 1.5 years ago. It wasn't compulsory yet. Initially, we want to do the extraction for valuation purpose, booking in the system, and that's it, but not for the reporting. But as reporting became compulsory, and that became our first priority, and because compulsory, pricing maybe is optional, you can save time, but reporting is not optional. You have to do it properly.
To round it out, also because it's an exciting topic now all around the world, but certainly in Northeast Asia, in Korea and Japan now for a number of years has been the whole ESG theme. And so the technology that you have applied in a different context basically also then can help to determine an ESG score.
This is also related to trading because initially we had a portfolio and we wanted to include ESG factors into our portfolio, meaning that how can we create some factors that help us to improve our ESG portfolio model? As we work on it, we realize that actually finding the ESG information is already difficult. Then we move on to be more specialized in finding ESG information. So currently, this is what we are looking on. We developed a model that is able to, for a given text, find out inside what is the ESG information. For example, you can have a company report of maybe 300 pages, and the ESG just maybe half pages somewhere inside the report. And it will save you a lot of time if you can just, boom, use the software and find it. We can also look at all the news that has been published for a given company and then find out if, for example, any news is related to ESG, related to this company. And not only that, we say, okay, today we found this bad news regarding this company. And the bad news, saying that is, for example, there is some abuse of labor practice. It allows the companies to be aware of what's going on, and address the issue. Or the fund manager to look more closely, and maybe if he found this kind of article, he can say, okay, when next time he interact with the companies, and they say, okay, I found this kind of information, can you explain? So that is the idea.
As hot as the space is, it's also still very immature, and there are different standards that are evolving and different standards bodies that try to make an impact and to harmonize all of this. But ultimately, with what you're doing, you can provide an independent view, and as the market matures, then you can grow with that. But there isn't a good source, and everything seems to be ESG right now.
Yes.
Even products that are maybe not so much ES or G, especially, as you said, if you're a portfolio manager and you want to get to the bottom of that, also justify your investment versus the partners that you have in the fund, for example. It's actually a pretty useful tool also from an investment compliance perspective.
You have the big players, for example, like Sustainalytics, S&P Global. Many companies, they produce, of course, very good analysis, a very in-depth analysis about ESG issues, and have a large coverage of many companies for the fund manager, and that's a very useful tool. And they score, although the score, if you analyze them, the score has a very big, dispersion, and is really not correlated at all. It's well known that the score depends a lot on your methodology, on which one you look at. And I think more and more investors want more detailed granularity. They're not just to be happy to say, okay, this is a good score, therefore I invest. This is low score, I sell. It's not like that. People become much more sophisticated, and they take it as information, but not the only information they will use to make decisions.
A great many applications, and so if anybody listens to this and is interested in the technology but has a specific custom use case that is maybe not covered by what we talked about right now, they should still reach out to you and have a conversation, because the technology that you're building can be applied in a wide range of problems.
In our case, we are going to look from some other less mainstream data. For example, we look at Reddit. Some conversation inside Reddit. We look at some tweets. We look at Glassdoor. And if somebody say, many people say, oh, this company sucks, or this company is racist. Okay, we pick it up. True or not true, but at least people can analyze it and maybe confront the company to say, okay, I've seen many comment about your labor practice or your gender, the discrimination issues. Can you explain? Of course, people are not naive to decide just based on the data, but at least it triggers some investigation, and then the fund manager or the analyst would look more closely rather than just looking at the report in general.
Excellent. Let me ask you one final question. Is looking at your team, it is a very international team to start with, in different locations around the globe. So you've got a Moscow-based technical advisor, and part of your data scientists are actually based out of Tunisia.
Yes. So we have many nationalities. So myself, I'm French. My two colleagues are Korean. And then we have two IT developers and head of IT actually based in Moscow. We have 5 data scientists in Tunisia. Yes, that is quite original setup. I don't know many companies who are doing that. Tunisia is very connected to France. And Tunisians have also education in French. There are some universities who are implemented also in Tunisia, having same program, the French program. So in fact, though, the young graduate from Tunisia, they are as good as the French. But there's one problem in Tunisia is that the job market is very difficult for them. Usually the young people, they like to go out to leave the country and to look for a job in France, in Italy, in Germany. But with the COVID-19, it has been a big problem. Initially, our objective is also, to help somehow the young to get a good job in Tunisia. That was even before COVID-19. But when COVID-19 happens, then we have so many resumes. Unfortunately, I cannot hire everyone, but we hire a few people that we could. We are kind of lucky to be able to employ very, very high quality without too much competition. Good data scientists is quite demanded. It is difficult in general to hire good data scientists because there's so many applications, so many demand. But for us, we have been starting now to build a good reputation in Tunisia, and I receive regularly applications to work with us, and then so we are able to find some good, talented people in Tunisia.
That's fantastic and helps build a local ecosystem as well. Hopefully, we're not stressing that too much and share the secret here, so you get.
No, actually, I want to share the secret. I actually want to welcome people to help to Tunisia, to set up things. Because, the world is big enough that there's competition everywhere. Not worry about that. Some people, they do this in Vietnam. Some people, they do this Philippines, and other part of Africa. It's not just only Tunisia. But from my point of view, I love Tunisia. I think it's a good environment. I actually want to promote it. I don't want to keep it as a secret for me. Hopefully, if people want advice, I'm happy to help.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that. That was a great conversation. So I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your experience with the Seoul FinTech Lab, the program, and what you're doing. It's a truly global organization that you have there and a very diverse team to start with. So we're wishing you all the best going forward.
Okay, thank you, Norbert, and let's stay in touch. I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.